My job is really to react to Sachin. And first of all, I'm glad I hired you. And did you get tenure when I was president? Or? Well, a little shout out for that, buddy. Come on. Anyway, I love listening to you, and I really learned a lot. Three things came to mind, because I think Axel's job and my job was to react to what you said. I don't think we were supposed to come up with anything original. I haven't come up with anything original in about 20 years, so trust me, it's not going to happen tonight. Three quick thoughts. The first one, a week ago today, I was in Israel. My wife Mimi's there. We had two of our children, my mother-in-law, 88 years old, and with a whole bunch of friends and administrators from Northwestern. We had a large group, and as I told you at dinner, I've been going to Israel for many, many years, right? And I don't usually do the Christian, the Stations of the Cross and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and things, unless I'm with Christians who had never been there before, and I knew it would be meaningful. So we were there, we were in Jerusalem a week ago Saturday, and a couple of people, Patricia Tejas-Ervin, some of you know, Vice President for Student Affairs, and Al Cubbage, Vice President for Public Information, a couple of others, very serious Christians of faith. So we went with them, actually, and to see them in their eyes when they're there in Calvary, and they're there in the Christ's tomb, and then the slab where they put him after they took him off, and to see the tears and to see the devotion and the faith, brought me to tears. And I would be honored to be there with you and your dad one day. So that was the first thing that came to mind, is that one of the things I love about Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, is that there's something for everyone. If there are any Muslims there, you go to the Dome of the Rock, and obviously for Christians and for Jews, there's no place like the Holy Land. And it's something we should all pray for. Trust me, we should all pray for it. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I was thinking, one thing I always liked about you was, in addition to being a great scholar and a teacher, you're a person of faith. And I've always felt really comfortable with people of faith, whether they're Jews, observant Jews as I am, or any other faith. And I still believe that. I actually do have friends who, for whom faith has no role in their life and in their identity, very unlike myself. But I've always felt there's sort of a comfort about that. And in the beginning, I sort of fell into the sort of trap that if you're of faith, then you're naturally attracted to anybody of faith. I don't know if any of you ever think about that. And that it's sort of easy because, you believe in certain things that are very common. And I think later, Bill, we're going to talk about universal truths, and I think Axel might talk about that as well. But it wasn't until I actually got here 5 years ago. And I got here 5 years ago, and one of the first things I did was I organized a lunch with local clergy. And Michael, you weren't there yet, but Tim, you were there, our chaplain. We had people, Catholic priests and Protestant ministers and a couple of rabbis. I don't think anyone from Muslim faith at the time. But we had a wonderful thing, and I got them all together, and I said, well, let's introduce ourselves. And you can probably guess what they did. So the first person came and they said, well, this is First Baptist Church, and I want to tell you we have a food kitchen, and I want to tell you we volunteer. And they were all talking about their public service stuff, and it was great stuff. And they all went around from there, and there were about 14 or 15 of them, and every single one talked about what Jews call tikkun olam, healing the world, just like you said, healing a broken world. And it was really beautiful, and it was really inspiring. And it got to me, and I said, it's kind of curious. I love to hear that. I think as 16th President of Northwestern, we'd love to help you with your soup kitchens, and we'd love to help you with caring for the elderly, and, we'd love to do that. But, I brought you here to talk about God. And they were like, are you kidding me? So it was like, it just never occurred to me that they thought that I brought them all together to talk about community service, as important as it is. I'm a person of faith. I just kind of felt, hey, this is good. I'm the president. Maybe I can get all these people together, and we could just talk about God, And then we went around the room again, and it was really very interesting. And they said, wow, this is like amazing. How did you ever get to be president of a secular university? Did you tell them? And I said, well, I don't know, they know I observe Shabbat, where do I go, I go to shul every week, and I keep kosher. I guess they knew certain kinds of things, but maybe they didn't know. I didn't feel like it was a deep, dark secret I needed to tell the board of trustees and the faculty on the search committee at Northwestern that I'm a person of faith. But, we went around, and that was really interesting. But then I got challenged in a really wonderful way. There was one person, I won't tell you which Christian faith, and he said to me, this is a really shocking conversation. I'm really shocked to be here at Northwestern and talk about God, and to have a president of this great secular university saying it's the most important thing that defines him as a human being. And I really love that, and I really respect you. But I think the conversation's too simple, as many interfaith conversations are. Because you just talk about, well, we all believe in some version of the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule and all the easy kinds of things. And he said, because that's all true, but I have to tell you, Mort, I have to tell you that in my heart, he said, I have to tell you that, as someone really of faith, not just somebody who talks about faith, I have to tell you, you have the wrong faith. And he went on to say, it sounds funny, and he said something. He said, because you don't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, in my faith, and I believe to my heart and soul, that when you die, you're going to go to hell. And I paused. I was a little taken back, and I said, well, that's a kind of an interesting thing to say. And then, it was really the first time I started thinking that, you know what, I think you're wrong too, And that's the thing about interfaith, right? When you really... If you're just a little bit of faith, and if you believe in God and you're a good person, I'm past that. I'm an observant Jew, and I love you, and I really do, and I respect what you say, and I love the ending, but it's not my faith. So that's the interesting thing when I listen to you, and it really opened my eyes, because when I told Mimi that, she was first like, oh my God, is that what he really said? And some people went, ooh, ooh. But at the end of the day, I had to say, I agree with him. I don't necessarily think he's going to hell, but, I don't believe the Messiah is coming. That's an important difference. Duh, right? So that's something that I think about. And as much as I loved what you said at the end, it's not my faith. And the last thing I want to quickly say is that, it's Pesach, it's Passover coming on Monday and Tuesday of next week. And we'll have Seders for 64 each night in the president's house. I don't know if any of you are coming. It tends to be more than half, actually, non-Jewish who come to our house. And I tell the whole story, and we do the whole Seder, if anybody's ever been to a Seder. And, obviously you tell the story of the Exodus, right, from the Hebrew Bible, of the Jewish slaves from Egypt. And, you tell the whole story. And one of the things I just love about Exodus is when Moses, the whole story of Moses, played by Charlton Heston. First of all, Steve Colbert's class of '86, so go easy on Steve there. And then secondly, Charlton Heston's class of '45, and he played Moses, so there. Anyway, so, there's a thing, and it's in the movie too, Yul Brynner, the whole thing, Charlton Heston, he's out there, and, he slays the guy, he's in the basket from a kid, the whole story, right? I think almost everybody in this audience is familiar with the Hebrew Bible, right? And, he's wandering in the desert. He has a family. This is 1300 BCE, so it was a really long time ago. And, maybe there's some science fact about it. Maybe there isn't. That might come up later, Bill. I don't care. I really don't care if it happened or not. For me, you act as if it did. And I have zero interest in the history about, did they find things, did they not? And David Opie, who's a wonderful rabbi, just, did this whole thing that you should do Pesach, even if I'm sure Michael knows, even if it didn't exist and somebody else just wrote a thing, it might have, and the whole thing. Anyway, so Moses is in the desert, and he sees a fire, which isn't unusual, of course, in the heat of a desert, right? So he's there, and he sees it, and he's, he doesn't make a big thing, but he sees that the bush is not consumed by the flame. It's the burning bush. And he walks up to it, and he hears, Moses, Moses, the voice of God. And, that's a moment where, I think about that a lot. And I think about it maybe not in the context that all of a sudden you hear voices and God speaks to you or anything. But I think of a wonderful expression that in Hebrew is Da lifnei mi ata omed, which means know before whom you stand. And in many synagogues over the Ark, where you have the Ten Commandments, right? And you have 10 Commandments, so often on top, and you have the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. And it says that, Dalif ne miataumed, know before whom you stand. And that's something I tell people all the time. And I said to ask that question, who do you, before whom you stand? And I think some people, it's God and their faith. And other ones is trying to be a good person, and it's their grandmother, or it's their second grade teacher, or it's their, little league coach or something. But I think that's a question that really does transcend whether you have a faith or which faith it is. But I think everyone stands before someone. And just as you said, Satya, so beautifully, you make decisions and you're trying to be grounded and you try to do the right thing. But I always think about that. And, for I think many people in this crowd, it's God, it's Jesus. For me, it's God, a different God than yours, but it's God. And then for people who don't have, faith, and there's other ways they could survive and thrive and be happy and be good people, it's somebody else in their life. So I always think about that, and I tell my students, regardless of faith, when we have these kinds of discussions, that always think about when you're making the key decisions in your life, who is it looking over your shoulder? And for me, it's my mother, it's my maternal grandfather, and it's God. So it's a little different. Thank you.